Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So before the break, we were looking at the incident or the story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrating to Medina Munawwara, accompanied by Sayyiduna Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And I was explaining that they were in the cave of Thawr for 3 days and 3 nights. Now, thereafter, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr anhu, they were receiving up-to-date information about the goings-on in Mecca. And the duty or the person who was responsible for that was Abu Bakr anhu's son Abdullah. So every day he will come and visit him and tell Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr anhu regarding what is happening in Mecca, what's the latest news, what's the latest information. Now, after being in the cave for 3 days and 3 nights, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr anhu thinking that the coast is now clear, they leave the cave of Thawr and they make their way towards Medina Munawwara. Now the Quraysh in Mecca, you could imagine that what they are feeling. They were so angry in sense that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has managed to escape without us being able to kill him. So you can imagine, and not only that, they were kind of deceived as well, because as I was explaining, فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ, that their eyes were veiled and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walked right in front of them. So not only were they angry at a missed opportunity of assassinating Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were also angry that the way he slipped through was kind of in a deceptive way. So you can imagine that they're very angry, they're very incessant. They were looking for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, searching for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they can't find him. So the Quraysh, they then make an announcement and they say that anyone who finds Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr anhu, we will offer him 100 camels. It's like, say, for a fugitive, they'll say that if you know information or the whereabouts of so-and-so, we will give you a reward of £50,000. So exactly the same here. They were saying to the people that if anybody seen Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if anyone can bring Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let us know and we will give you as reward 100 camels. Now there was a person called Suraqa bin Malik bin Joshua. He was a mushrik, but later on he converted to Islam. Now what happened was, somebody told him that, you know what, I think I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think I saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam near the caves with another man. Now when Suraqa bin Malik, when he heard this, his first reaction was, do you know what, the two people which this person has seen is actually Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr anhu. But obviously he didn't want that person to get the reward. So he says to that person that, oh, do you know what, no, that's not Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're probably dreaming or something like that, you had an illusion or something like that. That's not Rasulullah sallallahu, that's not Abu Bakr anhu. So he talks that person out, tells him, oh no, you probably, went to sleep late or you had, too much, haram stuff, whatever, and basically, that's not Rasulullah sallallahu, that's not Abu Bakr anhu. So he told him to basically go back home. Obviously, Suraqa bin Malik knew that it was Rasulullah sallallahu, Abu Bakr anhu. As soon as he manages to convince that person that it's not Abu Bakr and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he sends him home, Suraqa then gets on his horse and he then pedals his way towards the direction of the cave of Thawr and thereafter to the direction of Medina Munawwara. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr anhu, they're making their way on the camels to Medina Munawwara when they see Suraqa bin Malik approaching them from behind. So Abu Bakr anhu at that moment is very, very kind of like concerned. Obviously, he was also concerned when he was in the cave, but he's also very concerned now because obviously Suraqa bin Malik is on a horse and they're on a camel. So any moment, Suraqa bin Malik is going to catch them. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then says to Abu Bakr anhu that La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana, that do not grieve, do not worry, because indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. And subhanAllah, sometimes it happens that these words, when it's being spoken, when it's being said, it kind of changes the dimension of your feeling. Sometimes it could happen that you're feeling very low, your iman is low, a lot of things you feel low in life. But somebody speaks to you, gives you some advice, gives you some nasiha, tells you that, look, come on, don't worry, have trust in Allah, place tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even though it's like these little words, but when you say it to someone, then what happens is that you then actually realize that, you know what, I shouldn't be worried, I shouldn't get too downhearted, I should place my trust in Allah. Look, I'm sure everyone here, brothers, sisters, also upstairs, we have trust in Allah, but sometimes what happens is that sometimes when we get into too much worldly stuff, we kind of forget about Allah sometimes, and we just look at what we call asbabs and causes. So we think that we need to do X, Y, and Z to feel happy, or we need to do this so that we could relieve our hardship. Sometimes what happens is that you just need to place trust in Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things easy for you. So exactly here, Abu Bakr anhu, even though his iman was million times more better than us, he had strong iman. But at that time of difficulty, he was thinking, look, we're on camels, Suraqa bin Malik is on a horse. In the next few minutes, he's going to catch us up. And he's going to then grip us, he's going to take us back to Makkah, and that's it. Our migration, our vision of spreading deen, practicing our deen in Medina Munawwara freely, is gone down the drain. So this is what Abu Bakr anhu was thinking. Alright, he was looking at asbabs. Asbab means he's looking at the material things. He was looking at what logic says. We're on camels, he's on horse, he's going to catch us, he's going to take us to Makkah, and that's it, we're dead. But obviously, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Messenger of Allah, Prophet of Allah, he was obviously reminding Abu Bakr anhu that, you know what? It's not all the time based on asbabs and causes and apparent or materialistic things. Sometimes, you know what? You just need the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he reminded Abu Bakr anhu that, don't worry, have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always with us. And this is like also another advice I want to give to you, brothers and sisters. In particular, those who are teachers, those who are obviously running organizations, giving da'wah and so on, that sometimes we sit down and we have so many meetings. How can we make the student learn? How can the student be a good student? Why isn't the student learning X, Y, and Z? How can we give more da'wah? How can we be more efficient? But sometimes, brothers and sisters, I'll just tell you something. You could make as much effort as you want. You could make as much preparation as you want. But sometimes you just need that dua from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need the guidance to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a prayer which I recommend everyone should be praying. Students in particular, teachers in particular, organizations in particular, called Salatul Hajj, the prayer of need. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. 2 rakat salah. You just make intention of Salatul Hajj, the prayer of need. Pray 2 rakat salah as normal, like you normally pray. You can pray long surahs, short surahs, it doesn't matter. And then afterwards, you then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you and to guide you. And tell the truth, obviously, got some of my students here. There have been occasions where, I would sit with teachers and we discuss, look, how can we make X, Y, and Z student learn properly? How can we encourage them to attend the lessons regularly? We used to think, and our meetings would last for hours and hours. But sometimes what would happen is that we would just pray salat, 2 rakat salat al-Hajj, we'll ask Allah to open up, make that student learn. And then we see that student afterwards, alhamdulillah, progressing in their studies. So it's not all the time effort, it's not all the time having long meetings, for hours and hours and so on. Sometimes it just requires that guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say not to have meetings. Yeah, we should make the effort, make the effort. Man jadda wajada, i.e. those who make effort, Allah will reward them. So make effort, but sometimes it requires that divine help from Allah to put you over the line, push you to the line. So exactly here, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr, they could see Medina Munawwara. They could just see the crossing line of Medina Munawwara. But there was one last obstacle, and that was this Suraqa bin Malik guy who was kind of chasing them down. So obviously, asbabs, or looking at it materialistically at that particular point, it seems as though that their vision was going down the drain. It seems as though they're going to be unsuccessful here. It seems as though any moment soon he's going to get us, and that's it. Migration, da'wah, propagation of deen, practicing our deen is all gone. But that's when you require Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. That's when you require dua. That's when you require wise words. La tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. And obviously, when people make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always accept duas. Now, you may be thinking, well, I've been making dua since 10, 15 years ago for something. Why isn't my dua accepted? Remember, brothers and sisters, that when duas are made from the bottom of the heart, the saddest thing is that we make a lot of dua to Allah, but very few of us will make dua which comes from the bottom of our heart. And that's why, I'm sure you've heard that hadith before, there are 3 duas which are always accepted. 3 duas. Obviously, 2 are curses, but 1 is a dua, which are always accepted. Number 1 is a parent's curse against his children. Why? Because when would a parent curse their children? When would a parent, a father or mother, curse his son or daughter? They will only curse them when, like we say in Urdu, munkasirul qalb, like when their heart is broken. But munkasirul qalb, like in other words, heart is broken, bechain, like we can't do anything about it. My son is giving me too many problems, daughter is giving too many problems. Then a badwa may come out of the parent's mouth. That is when it is accepted. Similarly, oppressed, number 2, oppressed person, when he makes a badwa against a tyrant. So someone's being oppressed, mazloom, he's got no one else to help him. His heart is broken. So he makes a badwa, he curses that person, that's it, that dua will be accepted. And the 3rd is a traveler when he makes a dua. Because a traveler, if you say in the middle of the desert, there's no one there, there's no reception on his phone, whatever, he can't ask for help, he can't phone for help. So he's also munkasirul qalb as well. He's also broken-hearted as well. So at that time, if he was to make dua, his dua will be accepted. So as I was saying here, that at that moment in time, the dua came from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's heart, duas were accepted. So obviously, Suraqa bin Malik, he's continuing the story, he's approaching Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr anhu. When he's about to approach them, what happens is that Suraqa bin Malik's horse kind of sinks into the rocky ground. So the ground is like proper rocky, flat, rocky ground. It's not like there was a quicksand there. Rocky ground. But when he was approaching Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his horse sinks inside the ground. Allah opens the ground up and makes his horse sink inside. So Suraqa bin Malik, he then says to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, look, I won't chase you and so on, forgive me and all these things. Obviously without, I think the next part of the story is mentioned in the course book in itself. So afterwards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forgives him, and then later on he accepts Islam. He then returns back to Makkah, And then there were other horsemen who were traveling in his direction. When Suraqa bin Malik is returning back to Makkah, what he does is that he tells them that, don't worry, no need for you to come this direction. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam isn't there. And in that way he manages to convince the other horsemen from not traveling in this way and finding Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam manages to leave for Medina Munawwara safely. Now moving on to the next page, page number 12, sorry, page number 10, sorry. He explains that on the 12th Rabiul Awwal, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he arrives in Medina Munawwara, and when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam arrives in Medina Munawwara, the first place he stops over or resides is the house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So he lives or he stays in his house, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari anhu's house. And I'll just mention a story. It's from tafsir sources. It's in the Quran as well, this particular story of, well, not the actual story, but of the name of the king. Now there was a king of Yemen, whose name was Tubba, Taba'in, Tubba. And Tubba, he was one of those kings, like you could say, like a Khalid bin Walid anhu, known for conquering various lands and cities. So he wanted to conquer Yathrib, Medina Munawwara. Obviously he lived before Prophet ﷺ's time, so he wanted to conquer it. So, as I was explaining before, that there was a large Jewish settlement in Medina Munawwara. So they said to Tubba that, you know what, you would not be able to conquer Medina Munawwara. Why? Because Medina Munawwara, the city of Yathrib, is a city where the final prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam will migrate to. So this city you're not going to be able to conquer. So when Tubba heard this, he felt a bit embarrassed that this city which the final prophet is going to migrate to, and then I'm trying to conquer it, he felt bad. So then what happened was, he built a house. And he said to the rabbis who were there, that when the final prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrates to this city, make him stay in this house. You know, let him live in this house. Subhanallah. Obviously, he was a non-Muslim, but even as you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts non-Muslims' du'as as well. Subhanallah, hundreds and thousands of years later, that house was there in Medina Munawwara. And it belonged to a companion called Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And destiny was such that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina Munawwara, subhanallah, thumma subhanallah, the first place Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stayed in was in Abu Ayyub al-Ansari anhu's house, that house which was made by that king Tubba hundreds and thousands of years ago. So that's like a story of a non-Muslim showing respect to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he also made a dua that I want this house to be designed by Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah made destiny such that yet Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would live in his house. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is living there. Thereafterwards, a few days later, and as with all organizations, and remember Islam was now going to be practiced upon freely, you need a base. You know, for da'wah, you need a base. Whether it's a house, whether it's a mosque, whether it's a center. You know, for da'wah, you know, in the long run, you need a kind of like a place where you can bring people in and out. So you need a base. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they knew the importance of that. So there was an area of land which belonged to two orphan children. And their name was Sahal, and the other one was called Suhail. So two orphan yatim children, one was called Sahal, and the other one was called Suhail. So this land belonged to them, and subhanAllah, they wanted to gift it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for free. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, we're going to pay you. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he paid Sahal and Suhail 10 dinars, 10 gold coins, to purchase this land. And it then goes on to explain, if you look at that page, that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they worked hard in kind of building the masjid. Okay, like they actually worked hard in building the masjid. And then again, from there, subhanAllah, another lesson for us, another lesson for imams, another lesson for religious, alims, scholars, teachers, that look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remember, in Masjid Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't like say, he wasn't sitting at home on his chair or on the bed and said, oh, you go and make the masjid, let me just relax here, and when it's done, give me a call, then I'll come and I'll do iftitah of the masjid or something. No. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he himself, Sayyidina Abu Bakr himself, participated in the building of the masjid. They did what we call the leg work, the dirty work of all the picking up the rocks and the stones and the making the pillars and out of date palm tree trunks and the leaves as roofs and so on. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has Abu Bakr, and they did that themselves. They didn't call in contractors, whatever, so and so builder to come and make it. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr, they weren't sitting at home and they were telling the Ansars of Medina, oh, you go and make it and so on. We Abu sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we Prophet Muhammad, we Abu Bakr. There was no kind of we then, there was no I then, there was no arrogance and takabbur then. Everyone was humble because, remember, as I said, everyone wanted to participate in the thawab. And this is lesson for us imams as well, that there's nothing wrong sometimes helping someone carrying the bench or table or these kind of things, and doing the safai, even cleaning the masjid, because this is what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. This is what Abu Bakr did as well. Even though they were so busy, even though they were great imams, but subhanAllah, look at their life, so humble, so down to earth at the same time. So even though they had knowledge, they were, in terms of taqwa and piety, they were in another level, but also they're mixed with people. That's why they were loved by everyone. If they were just always separate from the people, if they just stayed in their own room, didn't meet and try to help people, then they were not going to be loved by anyone. But they were loved by everyone. Why? Because of their akhlaq and their manners. So I was saying that they all helped in the making of Masjid Nabawi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now I want to mention two things about the migration and the hijrah. Two things which we can even kind of apply in this day and age. Two things. Number one is forward planning. That forward planning is part of deen. When you read the story of hijrah, because I don't want to go too into detail because hijrah is more got to do with seerah, so I don't want to mix the two together with Sayyidina Abu Bakr and that's why I'm just giving a watered down version of the hijrah. But when you read the hijrah in detail, you find one thing, and that was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam forward planning. He told Abu Bakr that you buy the camel, make sure you're prepared. And then Abu Bakr got his daughter Hazrat Asma to prepare the food. His son Abdullah was kind of bringing information. His slave Amir bin Fuhayra were looking after the goats and the camels. So this is what we call forward planning. Planning for the future. And unfortunately in our area, in our customs, we always kind of lastminute.com, if that makes sense. We don't think about the fall. We don't think about what we're going to do. It's always wake up in the morning, there's a course, let's get everything prepared, let's get our books, let's get the laptop, let's get everything ready and sorted. Actually, forward planning is that we plan months and months in advance, so that when the time comes, we are all prepared. The reason I'm mentioning is that many people think, well, forward planning isn't right. Yeah, it's not right when it comes to worldly things, because remember, worldly things, as I mentioned, we shouldn't have big aspirations. But when it comes to religious things, when it comes to da'wah, when it comes to ta'lim, yeah, you should have forward planning. You should have okay, year 1 syllabus, year 2 syllabus, year 3 syllabus. Enough you know with forward planning when it comes to ta'aleem, when it comes to ilm, when it comes to knowledge. So that's one thing. And also another point to remember from here is, subhanAllah, teamwork. Two things. One is forward planning is part of deen, and number two is teamwork. Here, again, as I just already explained, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he distributed the responsibilities. So his son Abdullah was basically informing him of what's happening in Makkah. His daughter Asma was preparing the food. And his slave Amir bin Fuhayra was grazing the camels and the goats. So this is what we call teamwork. Obviously, you know, it wasn't such that Abu Bakr, they were doing the cooking, they were like, you know, grazing the goats and they were getting the information. No, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Abu Bakr, they kind of like told the other Sahabas to kind of do that for them. And the reason why, everyone, brothers and sisters, is so that we could understand teamwork. And even when you look at Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if he wanted, or if Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala wanted, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I'm sure he would have the power to have given da'wah to all four corners of the world. But no, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala chose the companions to help and assist Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's why you had Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, every Sahabi in their own, subhanAllah, beautiful, subtle way helped the deen, did khidmat for the deen. Rasulullah said he could have done everything himself. I'm sure he would have been able to do everything himself. I'm sure with the help of Allah, he could have done everything. But why wasn't that the case? Why was the need of the Sahaba? Is so that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala can explain to us the importance that it's a team. It's not a one-man show, it's not a one-man thing. And plus, we don't have the ability to do everything. You know, like, you know, as I said, for this course to happen, you know, I wouldn't have done all this by myself. Obviously, you need the brothers, you need the sisters to help out with the printing, with the food and these kind of things. So it's not like, you know, the chefs come and just deliver the talk and he's put the tables there, he's put the coffee and everything and so on. No, it's just like, it's a teamwork. So it's all a teamwork, everybody does their own little bit, but obviously the aim is to obviously spread the deen. So that's the second thing which we can understand. One is teamwork and number two is forward planning. So these are the 2 points which we can understand from the hijrah and from the migration of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now on this same page, page number 10, on the last paragraph, again you could have a read up in your own time. I'll just mention a few things and then I've mentioned a few things on the slide as well, which I'm sure some of the brothers and sisters have already had a read up already. And that is the importance of something what we call muakhat. Muakhat basically means brotherhood. As all of you know that when the muhajiruns, the people from Makkah, when they migrated to Medina, the first thing which Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam established was brotherhood, togetherness, ittihad, muakhat, brotherhood and so on. And basically, why that was important, I mentioned it there on this slide, that the reason why that was important is, just imagine, put yourself in the shoes of the muhajiruns who had left, some of them left their family, some of them left their wives, some of them left their children, some of them left their husbands, and they came to this new area, city, Medina Munawwara, where first and foremost the climate wasn't that helpful, and also they had no money at all, and not only that, it was a total alien place where they didn't know anyone. So you can imagine that how emotionally affected they must have been. Just imagine you leave everyone and you go to a city, and not only that, you don't have money to, like, you know, book a hotel or something like that. You don't have, you know, no friends, family there. So, you know, physically they must have been drained, because obviously, imagine the journey from Makkah to Medina. Obviously, brothers been for Hajj and Umrah, we know that, you know, it's around 12 hours on coach to travel from Makkah to Medina, with 8 to 10 hours, I think. So these Sahabas were walking from Makkah to Medina, so they must have been drained physically, and then emotionally they must have been drained as well, leaving all their loved ones behind. Not only that, but even like their belongings, they couldn't take all their belongings with them. So they were emotionally distraught, physically distraught. So what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to establish was brotherhood, muahat we call it in Arabic. So he told the Ansar that, you know what, these Muhajir brothers, treat them as your own brothers. You know, take them into your house. And subhanAllah, that's why we call the people of Medina Ansar, the helpers, why we call them that, subhanAllah, whatever they had, half, they said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we don't mind, we'll give half of our property to the Muhajir brother. We will give half of our land to the Muhajir brother. Not only that, because I think, you know, even in this day and age, there must be someone, you know, who must be very generous, and they're probably saying, yeah, you know what, I don't mind, I'll give half of my property, half of my property. But look at the Ansar. Not only that, brothers and sisters, the Ansar were, some of them had 2 wives. They said, oh, Prophet of Allah, will divorce one of our wives so that the Muhajir brother can marry her. SubhanAllah. No one will do that. Obviously, probably with wealth, yeah, fair enough, we could give half of it away. There may be, you know, there may be some who probably say no, but I think there may be some whose iman is strong, who still say, oh, I don't mind, I'll give half my property away. But if you have 2 wives, and you know, a husband obviously who loves his wife and so on, he will not be willing to sacrifice his wife for another man. He'll never do that. Even though he's got 2 wives, 3 wives, it doesn't matter. He won't sacrifice a wife for another man. But the Ansar were ready to do that. So this is what we call brotherhood, this is what we call ittihad. Now obviously, we can't be like the Ansar, but to a certain degree, and I think I mentioned this as well, that we should also establish brotherhood here, ittihad, closeness. And obviously the main principles of brotherhood, muahat, is that it's a support thing. It's supporting them. You know, it's not like you're giving them money all the time. It's like sometimes the support, like people knowing that, okay, the Imam Sahib is here, so if I do have any problems, I'll speak to the Imam Sahib about my problems. It's just that sometimes, sometimes when people go through difficulty, I'll tell you something, brother, it's not all the time people want money. It's not all the time people want something from you, because sometimes we are reluctant to help brothers or sisters because we think that, oh, they're going to ask for money and we don't want to give money to them. It's all about money. Sometimes, people, when they go through difficulties, they just want someone to speak to. That's what it is. That's the base behind it. They just want, if there's an Imam Sahib there who they trust, an Imam or a scholar or a Mufti, whatever, just basically speaking to them about their problems, that's what they want. But the thing is that obviously, even everyone's so busy nowadays that we don't even have time to give to these people. But that's what they want. That is brotherhood. Like people knowing that you're there to help them where the need is. And that's what happened to the Muhajir brothers when they went to Medina. They were literally broken. Broken hearted, broken in terms of property, broken in terms of emotion, physically broken. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, established a brotherhood to bring the love back to them, to bring that affection into their heart, to kind of mend their heart, to mend their emotions that, you know what, even though you made such a sacrifice, but this is like a new way of life for you. And this is what brotherhood is, to be for each other. As mentioned in the hadith, al-Muslimu akhul Muslim. A Muslim is a brother for a Muslim, which means that if any part of your body aches, the same way, if your finger hurts, the rest of your body hurts. So exactly the same when we see our Muslim brothers or sisters in distress, it should also hurt us as well. And we should also try to try our best to remove that problem or to remove that difficulty. Okay, moving on to page 12 in the course handbook. The first section there is regarding battles. Now, according to the consensus of all the scholars of hadith and all the scholars of seerah, by history, they are all of the opinion that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu participated in every single battle. So every battle which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam participated in, Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, you name it, Khaybar, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was side by side with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, just a few things about battles and wars to mention. Obviously, a lot of people, they raise these objections that why in Islam we have battles, why in Islam we have wars, why couldn't the Sahabas kind of convey the message peacefully? Why did he resort to wars and battles? Now the reason why, brothers, is think of battles in a way to be a kind of, how should I say, a blessing. Battles in a way is a blessing. In what way? Let me just explain. Do you know in the past what would happen? And I'm sure you've read it in the books of tafsir. What happened in the past was, if a group of people disobeyed their Nabi, what happened? Allah's azab would come straight away and He would annihilate every single one of them. Look at the people of Nuh. Flood came, everyone was annihilated. The people of Lut, destruction came, everyone was destroyed. So what I'm trying to say, in the past, anyone who does sins, goes against the Nabi, khalas, Allah's order will come and the entire population will be destroyed. But in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided that there will be no mass punishment for people who disobey His command. But what will happen is that people will wage war against them. And after waging war against them, because obviously in wars, some will die, but most will survive. When you look at all the wars, which are, well, I'm not going into detail, but when you read all the wars, you'll find that, most of the non-Muslims who were killed, they were in their tens and that's it. They weren't like thousands and thousands like what's happening nowadays, through bombs and so on. They were just in their 10s and 30s and 40s and that's it. So some people get killed, but the majority, they survive. So the ones who survive, it gives them the tawfiq, or it should give them the tawfiq to what? To ponder that, look, you know what, we should think about the hereafter, we should think about converting and so on. And even after wars, it's not compulsory you have to convert to Islam. There is still the option there. That do you want to convert to Islam? And if they say no, then the rule is that, okay, fine, let them pay the taxes and let them stay in the Islamic state. Because Allah says in the Quran, La ikraha fi deen. There is no force in deen. So when there is no force in deen, brothers and sisters, this is what I don't understand is nowadays, what happens is that unfortunately, you get a lot of like segments within our Muslim community. Someone's doing da'wah, someone's in teaching, someone's in tasawwuf or tazkiyah. But then what happens is that there's too much force regarding that. So someone who's in da'wah, they'll say, no, you just have to do da'wah. Da'wah is the only way to achieve success. Someone who's in teaching or ta'aleem, they'll say, or ta'aleem or teaching is the only way to success. Someone who's in tasawwuf and tazkiyah, there will be people who say that tasawwuf is the only way to success. And they force it on people. So what I want to understand is that how can you force these things on people when there's no force in religion itself? Allah says, La ikraha fi deen. You don't even have to be a Muslim. Obviously, if you don't be a Muslim, you get punished a year after. What I'm trying to say is that you can't compel someone to be a Muslim. So when you can't compel someone to be a Muslim, how can you then compel someone, or you have to choose da'wah as a way of life? You have to choose ta'aleem and tadrees as a way of life. You have to choose tasawwuf and tazkiyah as a way of life. You can't force, when you can't force the aqaid on someone, how on earth can you force furu on someone? How can you force like teachings on someone? How can you force da'wah and tabligh on someone? So that's what I'm trying to explain here, that even after lands and places are conquered, there's still no force in accepting Islam. You still have the option. So as I was saying that in a way battles is actually a blessing from Allah, because the other option was that people disobeyed Allah's command, then a mass punishment would have come and they would have been destroyed. Now I'm just going to look at some of the battles here which Sayyidina Abu Bakr participated in, the main ones. Obviously the first one is the Battle of Badr. Everybody knows the Battle of Badr, the very first major battle in Islam, which happened in 2nd Hijri. And everybody knows the probably the introduction regarding this battle. Abu Sufyan was traveling from Syria. And Syria, or in those days, if you needed to travel to Syria, you had to travel by Medina. You had to cross Medina to go to Syria. So Abu Sufyan was coming back from Syria, he actually crossed by Medina to go to Mecca. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard that Abu Sufyan is traveling or is passing by Medina and he's got a lot of goods in the caravan, a lot of saman, a lot of money, a lot of dinars in the caravan. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sahabas decided that let's intercept this particular caravan, take all the goods and take the goods back to Medina. Now you may be thinking, well, isn't that looting in a way? You know, why is Abu sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordering the companions to loot? So the reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving this command is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was looking at it through justice, because the Sahabas, they had migrated from Makkah and they had left all their buildings. But some of these Sahabas, as all of you know, someone like Musab bin Umair radiallahu anhu, in Makkah he was like proper loaded, he was rich. When I mean rich, he was rich. But when he went to Medina, he didn't have enough coffin to bury him. That's how poor he was when he was in Medina. But in Makkah, he was really rich. So what I'm trying to explain, brothers and sisters, is that this caravan of wealth and money was being intercepted with the intention that the money can be used to then obviously regenerate in the Medina economy and help the Muslims there. So that was the reason why Rasulullah decided to intercept the particular caravan. So you're going to explain that obviously Abu Sufyan managed to escape, but before he managed to escape, he told he sent a message to the mushriks of Makkah that look, the Muslims are about to attack us. So the mushrikeen of Makkah, the leaders like Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, you know, they were like proper enraged that, oh, look at the Muslims, you know, look at them, they want to attack us. You know, look how, you know, look at us here, we're so big, we like warriors and so on, and look at these Muslims, they want to now start a fight with us. So they were enraged. So they marched towards Badr. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions, only 313 of them, they weren't equipped at all, they hardly had anything. Whereas the mushrikeens of Makkah, they had you know, the weapons and armory, you name it. So they came to Badr, and it was the night before the actual battle. Subhanallah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made this particular dua. If we have a look at the last part of the slide, the second paragraph, where this is the dua Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made. Oh Allah, here are the Quraysh, who in their vain glory seek to deny and cry lies against your messenger. O Allah, support us with the help you promised me. O Allah, were this small group of Muslims to perish, no one in the whole world would remain to worship you. In other words, that Rasulullah made this dua, that if this small group of Muslims were to die in this battle of Badr, 313 of us, then there would be no Islam anymore. There would be no deen anymore. Now, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he was hearing what Rasulullah was saying. Rasulullah became really emotional when he was reciting this particular dua. So Abu Bakr then touched Rasulullah's shoulder and he said, that's enough, Rasulullah. In other words, you know, Allah has accepted your dua. And then the following day the battle happened, and obviously, as everybody knows, the mushrikeens were defeated. Only 300 or so Sahabas, but they managed to overturn 1,000 of the non-Muslims. So this happened because of dua and help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels were also there and they also helped in defeating the mushrikeens of Makkah. So that was the first battle, the Battle of Badr. The next major battle which happened was the Battle of Uhud. Now Uhud happened 1 year after, i.e. in 3rd Hijri. And again, the reason behind the battle was more like the mushrikeens of Makkah. They wanted revenge, if that makes sense, for the loss of the first battle. So what happened was that, again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for this battle, he saw a dream or a vision, and in this dream he saw that a cow was being slaughtered. He saw a dream that a cow was being slaughtered. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also saw a dream that he had a sword in his hand. When he shook the sword broke. And then he shook it back again, and the sword returned back to its original state. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam interpreted the dream as the cow being slaughtered, referring to Sahabas being martyred in the Battle of Uhud. And the sword breaking and the sword returning back to its original state, indicating that in this battle, i.e. the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims will be defeated, but the sword returning back to its original state, indicating that thereafter, i.e. after the Battle of Uhud, the Muslims will be victorious. So that's why we look through history. After the Battle of Uhud, the other subsequent battles, Khandaq, Khaybar, Banu Mustalaq, and so on and so forth, Fateh Makkah, the Muslims were victorious in every single one of them. And just very quickly, everybody knows what exactly happened in this battle. Even in this battle as well, the Muslims were easily defeating the Mushrikeens of Makkah. Easily defeating them. Now what happened was that there were 50 archers who Rasulullah sallallahu positioned them around Mount Uhud. And Rasulullah sallallahu told the archers, unless I tell you, don't leave your spot. Don't move from this position. Unless I tell you, but you need to stay here. So now what happened was that because the Muslims were easily defeating the Mushrikeen, so the 50 archers thought, oh, do you know what? Yeah, we won the battle now. Let's leave our spot. So they left their spot. But what happened was Khalid bin Walid, at that time he wasn't a Muslim, he was a non-Muslim, he was still a mushrik. He then attacked the Muslims from behind the mountain, and in that way the Muslims were defeated. And this obviously leads to a particular question again sometimes people have, is that, oh, we are Muslims, how on earth were the Muslims defeated in the Battle of Uhud? Like, why were we defeated for? So the simple answer, brothers, is that, and sisters as well, that this is dunya at the end of the day. You know, dunya, Allah has made dunya such that even those who are on the haqq, they will also sometimes be defeated as well. This is the system of Allah. Just imagine if the Muslims were winning every single battle, then what will happen is that everyone will think, oh, because the Muslims are winning every battle, that is the true religion. You know what, let's just become a Muslim. So you won't get the true, genuine believers. You'll get a lot of like so-called Muslims, a lot of munafiqs joining. So what then happens is that you then have what we call, certain battles where Muslims are victorious, Muslims are not victorious. Why? So that people then could decide which is the truth, which is the haqq. And remember, this is always, dunya is always going to be like that. There always will be a balance between goodness and evil. So we, within our own judgment, then decide which one is the haqq, which is the truth. So you got Islam, at the same time you get kufr. Where there's khair, there will always be shar and evil. Where there's Ibrahim alayhi salam, there will be someone against Ibrahim alayhi salam, i.e. Namrud. Where there was Musa alayhi salam, there will be Fir'aun. Where there was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there was Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl. It will always happen. This is, Allah has made it such that deen, nur, whatever, you get ilm, knowledge, you'll get zulmat and darkness on the other side. You get good deeds, you get bad deeds. Allah has always made the opposite so that people could decide what is the haqq. So what we can understand from here is that Allah has made it such that Muslims will not be victorious in any battles. And not only that, subhanAllah, there's also a hadith of Sunan Tirmidhi. SubhanAllah, when you study deen, you will understand hikmat behind everything, wisdom behind everything. It's also a principle of Allah, subhanAllah, it's a usul of Allah, that nothing in this world will be raised except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put it down. In other words, what happened was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a camel called Qaswa. And Qaswa was one of those camels that every race he participated in, he would win. But once Qaswa was racing a camel of a Bedouin, a weaker camel. But the Bedouin's camel, he beat Qaswa. So all the Sahabas were shocked that Qaswa lost. He had a perfect record. He won every single race, and now he was defeated. So Rasulullah ﷺ said, well, don't worry, this is Allah's usul and principle that nothing will be raised except it will taste defeat. And that's the usul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it goes for everything in life, athletes, football teams, whatever. They will always never be successful. There will be a time when they will go down. And that's why when you look through football and so on, there will be teams who will be winning the Premier League, but then there will be situations where they may not be winning. And it happens everything. So there, one era, in one decade, you may have one team being successful, then you have another decade where another team is successful, and so on. So every time it rotates like that. Obviously, we think, the pundits, whatever you call, they'll think, oh no, because this player was sold, that's why they got weak, or so on. Or this player wasn't brought, the manager was changed, that's why they're not successful. But obviously, we as Muslims look at it because it's Allah's usul that no club, no athlete, no team, no one, if they are raised, Allah will always put them down again. Because only Allah can be high, no one else. So this was the usul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why even the Muslims as well, here and there they will taste defeat. Why? So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can show that who are the genuine believers and who not are the genuine believers. Okay, moving on to the next battle very quickly. Banu Mustalaq, again, was a battle where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Muslims, they defeated the mushrikeens. But Banu Mustalaq, the reason why I mentioned it here is it's known for another incident which obviously affected Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu. It affected him obviously because it affected his daughter, Sayyida Aisha anha. And because of that reason, it affected Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu as well. Now, I'm sure everybody is aware of the story or the incident. It's known as, if you look at the course book, the incident of Ifk on page 14. Now, Ifk, basically, what happened was, as all of you know, that Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu's daughter Aisha, she was married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But unfortunately, some hypocrites made a vile slander against Sayyida Aisha anha. What happened was that on the way back from Banu Mustalaq, this battle, Sayyida Aisha anha stopped over. Well, everybody stopped over, and Sayyida Aisha went to the bathroom to relieve herself. While she was relieving herself after she finished, she lost a necklace, so she was looking for it. So by the time she returned back to the camp, everybody had left. So she thought to herself, you know what, I'll just stay here. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will realize that, oh, Aisha's missing, and will send someone for me. So she stayed there. Now it was the way or the sunnah of Abu sallallahu alaihi wasallam that for journeys, for battles, he will appoint someone to be at the back of the camp, or the back of the army, so that if there are anyone has been left behind or any kind of belongings, then that person can pick it up, and then they could then rejoin the main part of the army. So the companion who was appointed to be at the back of the army, his name was Safwan bin Mu'attal radhiyallahu anhu. That was his name, Safwan bin Mu'attal, Mim Ayn Tualam. Now what happened was that he was approaching, and then he saw Sayyida Aisha anha by herself. So obviously, like any man would do in that situation, even though mahram, even though she's not lawful for you, if that makes sense. If you see a woman sister by herself in the middle of a desert, nowhere, then obviously you try to help her. He lowered his camel, he made Sayyida Aisha anha sit on the camel, and he then obviously took Sayyida Aisha anha back to Medina Munawwara. But Nauzubillah, some munafiqeen saw this, oh, Safwan and Aisha anha coming together. Nauzubillah, 2 plus 2, they ended up with 10, and they started accusing Sayyida Aisha anha of being unfaithful to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is known as the incident. If literally means slander, the incident of slander. And obviously you could imagine that, and it was for a good month or so, no wahi was being sent by Allah. So you can imagine, and unfortunately it happens nowadays as well, rumors, isn't it? You know what happens, rumors, especially now it's more dangerous with internet and WhatsApp and Twitter, all these things, that one rumor you spread, you just make it up, because of internet and so on, Facebook, it could spread to 6 billion people in a matter of minutes. So that's what it was. Nothing happened, obviously, just because you saw a man and a woman, and that's why it's very important that you shouldn't spread rumors, unless you've seen something yourself, or unless you've got proof or evidence, then okay, you could tell someone to warn them X, Y, and Z. But, when you just see a man and a woman, just for example, a man and a woman just like, I don't know, you just see them, right, and they're not doing anything haram, then to kind of spread a rumor, or they're kind of like sleeping with each other, or whatever. Just say you just saw a man and woman just like they were talking, whatever, in the shops, whatever. There was nothing intimate going on there. There was no impression that they were being intimate. They weren't like holding hands or anything like that. They were just talking, and then afterwards spread a rumor that, they're kind of seeing each other and they're being unfaithful to their partners and so on. That is slander. That is buhtan. And this is exactly what happened with Safwan bin Mu'attal and Sayyidah Aisha Anha. Without analyzing, without finding out the real version of the story, just spread a rumor. So you can imagine that, how distraught Abu Bakr must have been in that situation. He's the father of Sayyidah Aisha, and obviously, his daughter is married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his close allied friend, and you can imagine how hurt Sayyidina Abu Bakr was. So this obviously led to the verses being revealed, where Sayyidah Aisha Anha's exoneration was done, that Nauzubillah, she did not commit such a crime or anything like that. So that's the incident of Ifk. And as I was saying before, at the beginning, this is what happens. Pious people, they are tested more. So if you are a Nabi, if you are a Sahaba, if you are a Khalifa, you get tested more by Allah. Things which is beyond your control. So this was a great test of Sayyidina Abu Bakr that who does he believe? Does he believe, the rumors that Sayyidah Aisha Anha was being unfaithful, or does he believe his daughter? And then it was very difficult for Abu Bakr at that time, because his daughter was married to his best friend, if that makes sense, i.e. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it was very difficult, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then exonerated and did the bara'ah and proved the innocence of Sayyidah Aisha Anha and Safwan bin Mu'attal anhu, and the hypocrites who were making those kind of allegations, and even some sincere Muslims as well, they also got involved in the rumor. So you're going to say that they were lashed 80 times, and that is the punishment for making false accusations. But remember, brothers, false accusations of someone's chastity. If you're just making false accusation that he's a thief or something, then even in Islamic State, you won't get lashed 80 times, but you may be punished in some other kind of way. But where you kind of accuse someone of their chastity, you get lashed 80 times. It's a very grave crime. Because honor, izzat, or chastity, in particular for women, girls, is something very important. Like obviously, a sister, if people find out that, or just say somebody made a rumor that this sister's not chaste, you can imagine that she will never ever get married. Especially in our Asian community, people will just spread the rumor and she will never ever get married. No one will want to ask her for nikah or anything like that, because she's not pious, she's not chaste, and so on. So that's why it's a very serious crime. That's why the rule is that anybody caught making accusations about women, even men as well, it's the other way around as well. Obviously it doesn't really happen with men that often, it normally happens with women. But even for men as well, you make false accusations, you get lashed 80 times. Okay, now the next part of the battle, or the next story, is the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, which obviously led to the conquest of Makkah. So again, obviously, you could have a read of it in your own time in a bit more detail, but what I'm just explaining is the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah. It happened in 6th Hijri. Very quickly, it happened in 6th Hijri. This Treaty of Hudaybiyyah. Again, the introduction behind that was that Abu Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he saw a dream, and in his dream he saw that he was performing Umrah. So he thought that this was a message from Allah to go to Makkah and to perform Umrah. But obviously the pagans of Makkah denied Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions access to perform Umrah. So what happened was that they then eventually agreed on a treaty of Hudaybiyyah, that basically will come next year and we'll do the Umrah. There were other parts of the agreement as well, such as in the treaty, like basically if any Muslim was to leave Medina, and leave Medina meaning like becomes an apostate, leaves Medina, goes to Mecca, then that so-called Muslim or apostate would not be returned back to Medina Munawwara. However, if it's the other way round, that if a mushrik from Mecca accepts Islam and comes to Medina Munawwara, then the Sahabas of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would have to returning back to Mecca. So obviously I think I may have mentioned it here, if I will mention it later on in the Hazrat Umar Anhu's talk, that Umar Anhu was really angry at that. He was like so angry, distraught. Again, he wasn't angry at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was angry that it seems as though that we Muslims were being undermined. Because we Muslims should, al-Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la, means that Islam is always powerful, will always remain high and powerful, and it will never be overpowered. So Hazrat Umar was so angry that what's happening here, this treaty gives the impression that we are the weakest and they have taken advantage of us. And Hazrat Umar didn't like that. Everybody knows about Hazrat Umar, you want to get the wrong side of him, and he was totally, really distraught and upset that basically we were shortchanged here regarding this particular treaty. But anyway, there was hikmah behind that. And the hikmah was that after this treaty, it led to what we call interaction between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. In other words, it now led to Muslims visiting Makkah for business, and it led to non-Muslims coming to Medina for business. But when they came to Medina for business, or when Muslims went to Makkah for business and training purposes, they saw the akhlaq and the manners of the Muslims, and they thought, subhanAllah, this is such a beautiful religion. So in that particular way, what happened was that many people converted to Islam. Many people converted to Islam, and this was obviously the forerunner, if that makes sense, to the conquest of Makkah, which I mentioned there as well, which happened in 8th Hijri. Yes, so conquest of Makkah, which happened in 8th Hijri, and then afterwards, that was more or less the end of the Quraysh. The Quraysh was the superpower at that time. After the conquest of Makkah, 8th Hijri, what happened was that they were all dismantled, and many of the leaders who were still alive at that time, like Abu Sufyan and so on, they all converted to Islam afterwards. So that was like Hudaybiyyah, conquest of Makkah, some of the battles which is mentioned, Battle of Uhud, which happened in 8th Hijri as well, just after Fateh Makkah. Now on page 18 now, in the last paragraph, just before the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's another battle here, which is known as the Battle of Tabuk. The Battle of Tabuk. Now, the reason I'm mentioning Battle of Tabuk is this was one of the battles where where Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu's fazilat and virtues excelled over the other companions. Now, Battle of Tabuk happened in 9th Hijri, and what was happening is that for a good 8-9 years, there have just been battles and battles and battles. And obviously, battles, it takes, not only is it physically demanding, economically it's demanding as well, because look, you need to have camels in store, you need to buy weapons, horses, it's a lot of money. So when the Battle of Tabuk happened, literally there was hardly anything in the reserves. Nothing at all. Any money which was there, it was used for this battle, Khaybar, Fateh Makkah, expenditure, preparing the army, soldiers, their food, their provisions. There was hardly anything left in the reserve for this Battle of Tabuk. But the Battle of Tabuk was needed. Why? Because the Christians of Sham at that time, the Roman Emperor, he was planning to attack the Muslims. So it was needed. There was the need for this battle. It wasn't like there was no need and Rasulullah decided to have a battle. But there was a need for that. So there was a need for this particular battle. So Rasulullah made an announcement, like sometimes we do in the masjid, chanda appeal, donation appeal. So basically made the appeal. And the appeal was that who's going to donate for this battle? So Umar radiallahu anhu said to himself, you know what? Today is going to be the day when I'm going to out-compete Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. I'm going to beat him today. It's always that whenever there's donation appeal made, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu always wins. But today I want to beat him. So Umar radiallahu anhu went home and he basically got whatever he had and he brought it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Umar radiallahu anhu that basically how much or what have you left behind? In other words, what have you left at home? So Umar radiallahu anhu said, Illa nisfuhu, i.e. half. I only left behind half. So then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu came and he basically bought everything, and he presented it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then asked Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, what have you left behind at home? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, Allah wa Rasuluhu, Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In other words, everything at home, I've given it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the only thing I left behind is basically Allah and His Rasul. In other words, nothing. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu then said to himself, you know what? I can never ever beat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. I can never ever compete with him. So this was the virtues and the fadl of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that during the Battle of Tabuk, he was able to kind of like outdo all the Sahabas, even Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. Now, going on to the next same page, page 18, obviously just before it finishes, or before the next section, death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a section there about the very same year Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed Abu Bakr to lead the pilgrims for the Hajj. Now basically, let me just explain what happened. So basically, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went for the farewell Hajj in 10th Hijri. So the year before that, i.e. the year when the Battle of Tabuk happened, i.e. 9th Hijri, in that year, i.e. 9th Hijri, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he could have performed Hajj, but he decided not to. And the main reasons why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not want to perform Hajj in that year was because, as I was explaining in the first session, that the mushriks, they were still coming to Makkah to perform Hajj. And obviously their performance of the Hajj was that they would take everything off, all their clothes off, they would become stark naked, and they would do tawaf. And they would be asked that, why do you take off your clothes and perform tawaf? So they would say that basically, the same clothes which we committed sins in, how can we wear those same clothes to basically perform tawaf? So that was their hikmat and their understanding. May Allah guide them. So basically, they were performing tawaf naked, and they were doing, as all of you know, that other kind of innovations were going on in Makkah. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't want to associate himself with that. So he appointed Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to basically go to Makkah, take a group, you're going to be the Amirul Hajj, you're going to be the leaders of the pilgrims. Take a smaller group to Makkah, perform Hajj, and make the announcements that after this year, no mushrik is allowed to enter Makkah. It's the haram now, that's why we call it the haram. So no mushrik is allowed to come to Makkah and perform tawaf. That's it. You're barred from entering Makkah. And that's why you see them, brothers, been for Hajj or Umrah, you see there's two directions, isn't it? On the road. One is for non-Muslims, one is for Muslims. So this is the reason why, because the road which takes you to Muslim is the Haram. No Muslim, no Mushrik is allowed to. Obviously there's ikhtilaf about can they enter for trading and so on. That's another ikhtilaf, another issue we don't go into here. But anyway, the main command was no Mushrik is allowed to enter Makkah Mukarramah. And number two, no one is allowed to perform tawaf naked from now on. So these were the two commands. Now when Abu Bakr was leaving Medina, he stopped over at a place called Zul Hulayfa. And Zul Hulayfa, again, brothers who've been for Umrah or Hajj will know, is a place where the people of Medina put on their ihram. So he reached Zul Hulayfa when the first few verses of Surah Surah Tawbah was revealed. And for brothers and sisters probably not aware which one is Surah Tawbah, it's the surah in the 10th para which doesn't have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim at the beginning. So it begins with Bara'atu min Allah wa rasulihi ila allazina ahadtu min al-mushrikeen. So it doesn't have Bismillah at the beginning. Yeah? That is called Surah Tawbah or Surah Bara'ah. So this surah was revealed. And basically in this surah, it was telling Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that certain pacts or agreements you have with the mushriks is now broken. So now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this was like a custom of Arabia, that if you're going to break an agreement, what you do is that you send your family member to go and inform the other party that you're going to break the agreement. You know, like it happens, say for example, may Allah forbid, but say if a couple, husband and wife, they're not getting along and they want to break the marriage. So obviously you get the wife's family, the husband's family, they get together and they'll sit down and say, you know what, we want to go their separate ways. It's like a usul actually. It's a principle of the Arabs. And also nowadays, well, that when you break an agreement, whether of marriage, whatever, you send a family member to go and break the agreement. So now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't want to go because he didn't want to be associated with the mushriks. So he then sent Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, his cousin brother, and also his son-in-law, a family member, to go and tell the mushriks of Makkah that the agreement is now broken. So now Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu met Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu in Zul Hulayfa, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu asked Ali radiallahu anhu that, are you here as a leader over me or as someone below me? So Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu said, no, I'm here with you as someone below you. In other words, you're our Amir, and I'm just going to come with you, and you're going to make the announcement what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told you, and I'm going to make a different announcement. So in other words, I'm not here to take control of whatever, I'm just here to basically make an announcement. So then they went to Makkah that year, 9th Hijri, they performed the tawaf, and then Sayyidina Abu Bakr anhu made his announcement, and Sayyidina Ali anhu made his announcement, and in that way the mushriks weren't allowed to visit Makkah anymore. And then the following year, the 10th year of Hijri, that was the farewell Hajj, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam along with the companions came and then performed the farewell Hajj.